I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Married to Lisa for 6 years, I always believed we had a solid partnership. At least I thought we did. We had our ups and downs, sure, but nothing that seemed insurmountable. She was the type to act like she was the smartest person in the room, always had a snarky comment ready, and she loved to throw around the word bitchy to describe herself when she was annoyed. Honestly, I used to find her attitude charming because it was so her. Our relationship started to feel a little off about 6 months ago, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what had changed. She'd come home late from work more often, sometimes with a strange smell on her clothes. I'd ask, and she'd brush it off, calling me paranoid or insecure. She'd say, "You're just jealous," in that dismissive tone that made my stomach tighten. I started noticing little things. Her phone would be glued to her hand, more than usual, deleting messages with a vengeance whenever I'd glance over. She'd suddenly get defensive if I touched her phone or asked to see her texts, which was unlike her. In the past, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just stressed at work, or maybe I was overthinking it. Then last week, I got a hit of something that turned everything upside down. I've been using my dashcam a lot lately, because the gas shortage had made driving a pain and I didn't trust anyone anymore. One morning I was driving her to work, and I noticed her phone was buzzing nonstop. Normally she'd ignore it, but this time she looked anxious, like she was hiding something. I glanced over and saw a message pop up. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Keep it secret. Don't tell anyone." Now, Lisa is the type to lie about everything, so I didn't think much of it at first. But the way she looked at her phone after that, nervously tossing her hair and acting like she hadn't just been caught doing something she shouldn't, made my gut tighten. I was curious enough to check the dashcam footage later that night. I mean, I had nothing to hide, so I figured, why not? When I finally looked at the footage, I saw her sitting in the passenger seat, whispering with someone. I zoomed in and my heart sank. It was her coworker, Mike. I recognized him immediately. They were laughing, talking about meeting up after work, planning where to go, what to do. The strangest part, they were talking like they'd been doing this forever, like they had a whole secret life beyond what I knew. I'd always suspected she was hiding something, but seeing it in black and white, or rather in high-definition video, was a punch to the gut. What made it worse was the way they talked about keeping it secret and not letting anyone find out, as if they were running some clandestine affair. I'd been carpooling with Lisa for months, and I'd never even suspected. I thought I knew her, but now I realized I'd been living with a stranger, one who's been sneaking around behind my back. I kept replaying that footage over and over, trying to process what I'd just seen. It was like my world had cracked open, and I was staring down at a jagged, unfixable mess. I didn't sleep that night, and the next day I confronted her. I was furious, heart pounding so hard I thought I might collapse. I told her I knew about the affair, about her secret meetings with Mike, and how I'd seen the footage. Her reaction. She spun this elaborate lie, calling me paranoid and accusing me of invading her privacy. She said she was just venting with Mike, that nothing was going on. She called me crazy for not trusting her, and then she threw in that classic line, "You're just insecure, that's why you're overreacting." I couldn't believe her. That bitchy attitude she always threw around, suddenly it felt hollow and fake. I felt a mix of rage, hurt, and disbelief. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she pretend what I saw was just some innocent conversation? I wanted to scream, to shout, but I just sat there, boiling inside, realizing I'd been played for a fool. That moment, I knew my world was falling apart, and I had to decide what to do next. But I also knew this was just the beginning. I was about to find out how deep her lies went and what kind of revenge I could come up with. After that confrontation, everything felt different. The house, which used to be a place of comfort, suddenly felt like a prison. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I was stuck in this whirlwind of anger, confusion, and betrayal. Lisa, of course, kept denying everything, throwing out the same tired lines about being innocent, about how I was just overreacting. She called me insecure, jealous, and crazy, just like she always did when she didn't want to face the truth. The worst part was how dismissive she was, acting like I was the problem, not her. I started noticing more things. Small things at first, her phone disappearing for hours, her getting defensive if I asked about her whereabouts. Then I caught her in a lie about where she was supposed to be working late. She said she was staying late at the office, but her location on my phone said she was at some trendy cafe downtown. That was the last straw. I decided I needed proof, real proof, to confront her properly. So I installed a little hidden app on her phone, something that could track her location and record calls if needed. I didn't want to do it, but I felt I had no choice. I needed to catch her in the act, or at least have undeniable evidence. I also kept checking the dashcam footage whenever I could, and I started reviewing all her messages, even deleting some to see if she'd slip up. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A series of texts deleted from her phone but recovered from the backups I had access to between her and Mike. They were planning their next meetup, talking about spicing things up and finally crossing the line. The language was explicit. They were talking about sex, about sneaking away for a quickie, about how they'd make it work without anyone knowing. It was more than just secret meetings. It was an affair. That's when I finally decided I'd had enough. I knew I couldn't just let this slide, not after seeing how deep this betrayal ran. I needed to confront her again, but this time prepared. I started to plan my revenge, not just to hurt her but to make her realize she couldn't get away with playing me for a fool. One morning, I set up my phone to record her when she left for work. I wanted to catch her in the act if she tried to deny again. I also got some of her belongings, like her phone and her purse, to check for more evidence. When she left that day, I carefully followed her to the cafe where her location had tracked her to. There, I parked a discreet distance and waited. Sure enough, after about 20 minutes, she came out with Mike. They looked genuinely happy, a couple sneaking away in broad daylight, acting like they had no shame. I stayed back, heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it, and I watched as they got into a car together. I was trembling, rage and heartbreak swirling inside me. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew I couldn't let emotion drive my actions. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and started recording the entire interaction from a distance. When they finally drove off, I followed at a safe distance, just enough to keep tabs on them. I wanted to see where they went, what they did, how deep this affair really was. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread, relief that I was finally getting concrete proof, and dread that I might lose everything I thought I knew about my marriage. That night I sat down and looked over everything I'd gathered. The videos, the texts, the location logs, it was all there, irrefutable. My wife Lisa had been lying to my face for months. She was cheating on me with Mike, one of my coworkers, someone I'd trusted to be part of our daily routine. The betrayal hit hard, like a punch to the stomach. I felt sick at the thought of her lying, sneaking around, hiding her sex with someone else behind my back. I couldn't believe I was living in a nightmare. All those late nights she claimed she was working, all those excuses about just needing some time to herself. It was all a lie. She was out having sex, making plans, sneaking around with Mike while I was at home, clueless. I started to think about everything I'd done for her, how I tried to be good, supportive, and patient. And this is how she repaid me. It made me feel sick. Now I was stuck. Do I confront her again, or do I just cut her out? Do I expose her to everyone, or keep this buried and move on? The betrayal was so deep I didn't even know if I could look her in the eye anymore, knowing what I now knew. But one thing was clear, I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see it. I needed to make her pay somehow. And I was already planning my next move. After gathering all the evidence, videos, texts, location logs, I felt like I was carrying a weight I couldn't put down. My mind was racing every second, trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, tear her apart, throw everything in her face. But I knew better. I needed to be smart about this. If I just lost my temper, I'd probably ruin everything and give her a chance to spin some BS story that she could walk away from with her head held high. That night, I sat alone in the dark, going over everything I had. The videos proved she was lying about staying late at the office, about just venting, about nothing more than innocent conversations. But I knew better now. This wasn't some innocent mistake. She'd been sneaking around, having sex with Mike, planning meetups and lying to me every step of the way. I had everything I needed to do something, but I had to be careful. I decided to wait, not because I was afraid, hell, I was furious, but because I wanted her to think I didn't know. I wanted her to keep talking, to slip up again, to reveal more. So I played it cool, acted like everything was normal, and kept gathering more intel. I even started documenting her daily routines, her interactions, just in case I needed it. In the meantime, Lisa continued to act like nothing was wrong. She'd come home, bitchy as ever, throwing her snarky comments around, acting like she was the victim. She'd complain about work, about me, about everything but herself. But I noticed she was more defensive, more paranoid. She'd often check her phone, glance around nervously, and sometimes I caught her whispering into her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. That's when I realized she was probably onto me. One day I decided it was time to confront her, but on my terms. I scheduled a date night, knowing full well that I'd catch her in a lie. I told her I wanted to talk, just us, about our future. She was dismissive, bitching about how she was tired, about how I was being paranoid, but she agreed to meet me at a restaurant downtown. I got a babysitter for the kids and I told her I'd see her there. The night came and I was nervous but also calm. I had everything ready, my phone recording, the evidence on my tablet, everything laid out. When she arrived, she was her usual bitchy self, sarcastic and dismissive, but I stayed composed. I started by telling her I knew about her affair, that I had proof. Her reaction: she tried to deny it again, calling me a crazy, jealous husband, and said I was imagining things. She even had the nerve to say, "Mike's just a friend. You're blowing this out of proportion." I looked her straight in the eyes and played the recordings I'd made that day. The explicit texts, the planning conversations. I told her I knew she'd been lying for months, sneaking around behind my back. Her face turned red, then pale. She started stammering, trying to come up with excuses, but the evidence was undeniable. I could see her realizing she'd been caught in her own web of lies. That moment, she finally broke down a little, tears welling up, but not because she was sorry. More like because she knew her game was up. She kept insisting she didn't mean for it to happen, that she was just stressed, that Mike was just someone to vent to, not that it was sex. I couldn't even look at her. I felt a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. How could she lie so effortlessly, so bitchily, and then expect me to just accept it? I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. I told her I needed space, that I couldn't live with someone who lied to my face, who played me for a fool. I told her I was done pretending everything was okay. And I left that restaurant knowing I'd have to make some serious decisions. I was angry, so angry, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I saw her true colors and I knew I'd never trust her again. As I drove home that night, I felt emptier than I ever had before. Part of me wanted to burn everything down, to expose her to everyone, to make her pay for what she did. But another part just wanted to walk away and forget I ever knew her. I realized this was a monumental turning point. I'd been betrayed by someone I loved, and I had to decide whether to fight for a marriage that was clearly broken or to cut my losses and move on. The worst part was knowing she'd probably try to spin this, try to wiggle her way out, but I had enough proof now. I could finally see her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with anything. But I was done being the fool, and I was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant starting over from scratch. The days that followed were a blur of emotion: anger, sadness, frustration, like I was caught in a storm I couldn't escape from. I kept replaying everything in my head, all the lies she told, all the signs I missed, and the moment I finally saw her true face. It was like waking up from a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I thought I knew Lisa, how she acted, what she said, who she was. Turns out, I had been living with someone entirely different, someone who lied so effortlessly she could fool everyone around her. I started packing her things, not because I wanted to throw her out immediately, but because I needed space to think. I couldn't keep her in the house, not after all I found out. I wanted to make her realize I was serious, that I wasn't going to just roll over and accept her bullshit anymore. I kept thinking about the times I'd been good to her, the sacrifices I'd made being supportive, trusting her, trying to build a future, and how she'd thrown all of that away for some sex with Mike. One night I sat on the porch with a beer, staring at the stars. I was trying to sort through my feelings, rage, heartbreak, betrayal, all swirling into one big mess. I knew I had to make a decision soon. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not with the evidence I had. I also knew I couldn't keep living like this, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if she was lying again, sneaking around, planning her next move. I decided I'd confront her one last time, this time with a clear plan. I wasn't going to yell or call her names. Instead, I'd lay everything out, show her I knew the truth, and see what she had to say for herself. If she wanted to save her ass, she'd have to come clean, no more lies. I also considered calling a lawyer just to understand my options, just in case I decided to end things permanently. The next day, I asked her to come over. I told her I needed to talk, just us. She arrived with her typical bitchy attitude, acting like she was the victim. I was calm, almost cold, and I told her I knew everything, that I wasn't just some fool anymore. I laid out the evidence, the recordings, the texts, the location logs. She tried to deny it at first, but I cut her off. I told her I wasn't interested in her excuses, that she could lie all she wanted, but I had the proof. Her reaction was priceless. She finally started to crack, her facade crumbling as I showed her the videos and the messages. She tried to spin it, claiming Mike was just someone to vent to, that she never meant for it to go so far. She called me jealous again, said I was overreacting, but I wasn't buying it anymore. Her bitchy attitude was replaced with desperation, a frantic need to cling to the lie she wanted to tell herself. I told her she needed to leave, not just for the night but for good. I couldn't keep her in my house, knowing what she'd done. I told her that I deserved honesty, respect, and loyalty, things she clearly didn't want to give me anymore. She scoffed, calling me pathetic, and said I was overreacting again. But this time it didn't matter. I was done. I told her I'd be filing for divorce, that I wanted nothing more to do with her fake ass, her lies, her manipulations. Watching her pack her things, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her what a bitch she was, but I held back. This wasn't about revenge just yet. It was about reclaiming my life. I realized I'd been played for a fool, and now I was taking back control. I knew the pain of betrayal would stay with me for a while, but I also knew I'd survive it. I'd rebuild somehow. As she left, I felt the weight lift just a little. I knew I had to be strong to keep my head clear for what was coming next. I started thinking about the future, about how I'd pick up the pieces and move on. I knew I'd face a lot of loneliness, but I also knew I'd be better off without someone like her dragging me down. I promised myself I wouldn't let her or anyone else treat me like a fool again. That night I sat alone in the quiet house, reflecting on everything. I realized that I'd learned something important. Trust is fragile, and some people will lie and cheat without a second thought. But I also learned that I was stronger than I thought. I could face the pain, the heartbreak, the anger, and come out the other side. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted closure, and I was finally getting it. I knew this was only the beginning of a long road, but I was ready for whatever came next. The days after she left were the hardest. The house was eerily silent, filled with the ghost of what it used to be. Every corner reminded me of her, her laugh, her bitchy comments, her sneaky lies. I started to feel this strange mix of relief and emptiness, like I'd finally cleaned out a toxic wound but was left with a scar that wouldn't go away. I kept recalling the moments when I thought I knew her, when I trusted her, and how all of it had been a lie. It made me question everything, my judgment, my instincts, my own worth. But amidst the chaos, I knew I had to focus on moving forward. I began the process of filing for divorce, gathering all the evidence, talking to a lawyer, preparing myself for the inevitable fallout. I knew Lisa would fight, call me crazy, accuse me of stalking her, or worse. She'd probably try to make herself the victim, spinning stories about how I was insecure or how she was forced into cheating. That bitchy side of her was always ready with a snarky excuse, but now I saw through her. Part of me felt a deep sense of betrayal, like I'd been punched in the gut over and over. I'd spent so many years supporting her, loving her, trying to make a life together. And she'd been out there, screwing our coworker, lying, sneaking around like I was some fool who wouldn't find out. I felt humiliated, angry, and a little lost. But I told myself I'd survive this. I had to. I started leaning on my friends, talking about everything, letting out my pain, my anger, my disappointment. They told me I deserved better, that I shouldn't let someone who lied so easily drag me down. Slowly, I began to rebuild my sense of self piece by piece. I even started going back to the gym, trying to clear my mind to get those angry feelings out. Every day was a battle, but I was determined not to let this break me completely. Then I started noticing the little things. The way her side of the bed was empty, the way the house felt colder without her presence. I caught myself thinking about what could have been, what I missed, and then I'd get furious all over again. I realized that the betrayal wasn't just about her cheating. It was about the trust I'd given her, the years I'd spent trying to build something real, only to find out it was all a lie. That hurt worse than I expected. One night I received a message from Mike. I wasn't expecting to hear from him, but there it was. He sent me a simple message, apologizing, saying he'd never meant to hurt me, that he'd just been caught up in the moment. I ignored it at first, but then I realized something. Mike wasn't just some random guy. He was part of the web of lies Lisa spun around us. His apology meant nothing. If anything, it only made me angrier. I wanted to shout at him, tell him how much he screwed up a good man's life. But I knew that giving him the satisfaction wouldn't do any good. What I really needed was closure. I knew I had to get rid of her influence completely. So I took down all her things from the house, changed the locks, and made sure there was no trace of her left. I wanted to erase her from my life, at least temporarily, so I could breathe again. I moved on with my work, focused on the kids, and tried to rebuild the pieces of myself that had been shattered. The emotional toll was enormous. I often felt angry, bitter, and betrayed, but I also found moments of clarity. I realized that sometimes people reveal their true selves when they think no one's watching. Lisa's true face had been right in front of me all along, bitchy, manipulative, selfish. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But now that I did, I knew I'd never trust her again, and I had to accept that this was the end of our chapter. The biggest lesson I learned. Trust is fragile, and some people will take advantage of that trust and break it with no remorse. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I can face the pain, the heartbreak, and the humiliation and come out the other side. I won't let her or anyone else define me by their lies. Moving on isn't easy, but it's necessary. I have to rebuild my life for myself and my kids, and someday I hope I'll find happiness again, without the betrayal, without the lies. Now I'm just taking it one day at a time, trying not to let the anger consume me, and focusing on making a better future. Because I know, deep down, I deserve that. I've learned who she really was, and I've learned that I don't need that kind of betrayal in my life. It's a long road, but I'm on it. And one day I'll be okay. Looking back, I realize this whole nightmare has changed me more than I thought possible. I used to be naive, trusting to a fault. I thought love meant never really questioning, always believing the best. But betrayal like this, it hits harder than anything I could have imagined. It's a brutal lesson in human nature, one that leaves scars you carry for a long time. Still, I also see it as a wake-up call. I've learned that people, even ones you think you know, can surprise you in the worst ways. Lisa proved to me that control and manipulation can hide behind a bitchy smile and clever lies. I was blind for so long, but once I saw the truth, everything changed. I learned to listen to my instincts, to trust myself more. I won't be fooled again. Most importantly, I've come to understand that sometimes the best thing you can do is cut your losses, no matter how much you loved or trusted. Someone, if they betray you so callously, you have to walk away. Otherwise, you just become a victim of their lies. I decided to focus on my kids, my career, and myself. I started rebuilding my confidence piece by piece and found strength I didn't know I had. It's not easy. The pain is still there, lurking beneath the surface. Every now and then I think about Lisa, the betrayal, the sex with Mike, and it stings. But I remind myself that I deserve better, that I'm worth more than a lie or a cheat. I've learned that I don't need someone who manipulates and deceives to be happy. I can find happiness on my own or with someone who truly respects me. Now I see life differently. I don't trust easily anymore, but I also don't close myself off. I'm cautious, but not bitter. Every day is a step forward, learning to forgive myself for not seeing it sooner and forgiving her for the hurt she caused. I know I'll never forget this betrayal, but I also know I won't let it define me forever. It's a chapter I'll always remember, but it's not the end. The biggest lesson I take from all of this is that honesty and loyalty are everything. Without those, everything crumbles. People like Lisa might hide behind a bitchy attitude and clever lies, but eventually the truth comes out. I'm not bitter anymore, I'm just wiser. I see now that life is too short to waste on people who don't value you. So I'm moving on. I'm healing. And I'm open to whatever the future holds, better, stronger, and smarter than I was before. I may have lost her, but I've gained something much more important, clarity and resilience. And in the end, that's worth more than any fleeting sex or fake smile. I'll always remember what I went through, but I refuse to let it break me. I'm still standing, and I will keep standing no matter what.